Good evening, dear viewers. This is Novatalk Television, and the show is the Vanguard Show. The host is Gad Kanyesje, the Patriot. Today I'm so happy and delighted to have good brains in the house. Today I will be discussing with two gentlemen. One is Kwichiriza Gideon, one of the CEOs of a media house in town. Gideon, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Gad. I'm glad to be on the Vanguard.
Thank you very much. And I'll be discussing with the peasant from Kashonji, Ewan Owen Rachija. You're so welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, my brother. And it's a pleasure being here to discuss issues, especially those pertaining to the current circumstances of our nation.
Thank you. Going forward, today we are going to tackle a lot of issues ranging from security, opening schools, one of the sagas that happened at Parliament when the First Lady, who doubles as a Minister for Education, invited MPs, and you know the story. Then we shall end with the Segirinya Sewanyana saga over there. So let's start. In the past weeks, we had bomb attacks in town. And on Saturday, last week, actually the other week, the president addressed the nation on security issues. And one of the things he introduced in the address were security cameras with sensors. These are sensors that will be detecting explosives. Owen, what do you make of that?
Now, first of all, the president is deliberate in all his assertions because he's an embodiment of the security of the nation. So his promise cannot be an overture per se, because he takes that practical responsibility to shelve his countrymen from irresponsibility of terrorists. So I may not be an expert in the cameras of cameriocracy, but at least if the president has said it, then it is necessary. The issues then are cameras such an exposure of terrorists? Are they preventive? Are they a solution in finality? What would they achieve in terms of toward national security? So let's hope that it is an attempt to resolve the general problem that is now encountering, or the country that Uganda is now encountering, that is insecurity in the general sense. But me, to speak as an individual, with or without a camera, there must be a semblance of peace guaranteed by the state, because it undertook under the Constitution to do so in order to save the lives of the country, of the countrymen. So I will not discuss the nature of cameras, but I will discuss cameras in line with the necessary objective they are supposed to fulfill, and that is achievement of peace against the insurgents. You get it? So the president is spot on the fact that he thought it fit to be one of those preventive measures that he can undertake or take or implement for the general peace of the country. You get. So now then, to what extent would those cameras prevent or mitigate these insurgencies? That cannot be my conclusion that they will, but I presume that they will, because even these cameras that they instituted following the murders that had ravaged the city, the shooting of these police officers, state attorneys, members of parliament, the cameras came and served a great deal of purpose, because some of them created leads or helped in establishing the corners or the caves of such criminals. You get? So if there can be such a camera that would sense a bomb, to be honest, that is going to be a great achievement of the country, because no state will understand the psychological strategy of a person in a sense of a suicide bomber. Here is a person who now elects to die, whereas a bomb comes into the city to kill people. There is nobody that can realize or see that this person who's clad in a very nice suit like you're putting on today has a bomb inside. You get? But then if you can have such cameras with those in-depth sensors, I think it's a very good, strategy by the president. So I would commend the president if he seeks to pursue that for purposes of preventing or controlling or mitigating these crimes in the city.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Owen. Gideon, what do you make of the president's statement of installing cameras with sensors that detect explosives?
Well, Gad, I think it is a very good idea. But now the question comes with, one, maintenance of those cameras, because you realize we have seen a number of cases with these cameras, the batteries being stolen out. We have seen even these traffic lights. They have lost, but people have taken the batteries.
Oh.
So as we think of having those cameras planted up there, we should think of how to maintain them. But personally, and this is my personal opinion, if these cameras are being thought of because of the of terrorism, I think it's not enough. Well, they could be there, but I think the government needs to boost the intelligence, the security intelligence, because it is the intelligence. Intelligence can be both artificial and human. So that means that the cameras are adding to that the artificial intelligence is limited. The human intelligence is not limited. What am I trying to say? I will give a basic example. When you're at your home, you might have all the security apparatus. You have a fence, a wall fence that has those electric wire, what are they called? Electric wires. You have a dog inside, a watchdog inside. You have a security guard with a gun. You have cameras. You get? But someone who plans to come and rob you already knows that you have all these security systems on your home. So they will see how to counter attack each of the systems. They will know how to deal with the security guard, how to deal with the dog, probably by using chloroform. They know how to deal with the cameras. They can look for a blind spot. So they will eventually enter inside. Yet you had all this, but do you have an invisible eye? That is the intelligence. For example, did you plant a camera somewhere on the way to your home that's probably under a tree that someone cannot notice? Did you pay some informant in the next trading center, for example? Because I assume that if you have all that security, then there is a treasure you're keeping in your home. It could be your life. It can be as actually it is the most expensive treasure. It's life. So if you paid some boy or a girl or some informant in the next trading center, and you told them to inform you on if they saw anything weird, any person they do not know, I think that would work better. So I think the government, as much as the president is thinking of installing those cameras, but the intelligence should be boosted such that we can pre-tell what is going to happen, such that we can be ahead of terrorists, such that we can have agents inside their own groups.
Infiltrating.
Yes, and giving information. I think that is the most viable way of fight.
Counteracting.
Counteracting, yes.
Oh, thank you, Gideon. By the way, this is another question in its own form, but in security. Don't you think the government is being reactive other than proactive? Like they have to first wait for these things to happen, then all of a sudden we have cameras. Now they are going to install sensors. Last time they had to coerce everyone to register SIM cards. Don't you think we are not being proactive as the security of this country is concerned?
Now, let me even say this, that at the raw level of a nomad like me, I may take it simply that the security of the country can be scored with a simple proclamation of any intervention. But you must also look at the sophistication of the person or the enemy the country is facing. We are looking at suicide bombers. You understand? So a suicide bomber, whereas is expected, his strikes are not anticipated, at least with a specific, with specific certainty of where it would take place. You understand? Now, any well-intentioned Ugandan would sympathize with government when it comes to fighting terrorism, especially where human beings have sacrificed their lives towards that voluntary martyrdom. You get? So now, proactivity or reactionary nature of government, to be honest, it is also confused. Government is confused. They do not know what to do where. The only thing that I see that can help government in a way of strategy to circumvent all these insurgent strikes is by going to the roots, the causative factors of these insurgents. Because you see, the will of a person who has donated his life into a bomber suicide bomber, it cannot be by any precision detected by anybody. You get? But now, you must go to the philosophical foundations of terrorism and understand the underlying causes. Then connect your zeal as a state to resolve those, issues. Otherwise, if you deal with, because you see, the strike in the city is simply a symptom. Why would somebody offer himself for that indoctrination? Because anybody would say, yes, we belong in indoctrination because these people come and co-opt children, go train them into radicals. What is the cause? Why is there exposure of these children? So those are social issues that create fertile ground for insecurity, especially as far as terrorists are concerned. You get so where the government can be proactive, because in what sense? Proactivity must be to address the internal organs of those causative factors that lead to the voluntary suicide bombing, in which somebody offers himself to die for whichever belief he gets. So proactivity must be engendered on addressing those causative factors. Then reactionary is an aspect of response. That is inevitable, whether you're proactive, because you see, those terrorists are not sleeping, because they are pursuing an ideological journey. And they must achieve it in order to install their own philosophy. So they are going to be creative in whatever form, because every day they think about on how to strike. As government is sleeping, in the semblance of peace that usually, comes up, the enemy who is in the bush, that radical extremist, is there thinking hard on how to maneuver and disorganize the state by bombing its people. You get so proactivity, yes, but they cannot. All that cannot stop the emergence of insurgencies through terrorism, because you have underlying issues, social issues. You must address those issues, which actually, in a general form, are all concerned with poverty. Yes.
Thank you, Owen. What do you have to make of that?
Well, I want to disagree with my brother Owen that I see a lot of security loopholes. One, you fought the ADF as a state, pushed it out of Uganda, and it is in the nearest country. It is in Congo, and you have not followed them there to destroy them. They still exist. They are restructuring and rebuilding. What I think we would call proactive.
But our forces are still there.
Yes, they are there. But how safe are our borders? We are seeing people entering, crossing our borders every day. That's what we mean. We are seeing refugees moving, and you don't know who is entering. They just cross and come. Two, you will agree with me, if you have gone to most of I'll just give an example. You go to police headquarters right now. You will come today. If you find the same officer on the reception desk the next morning, they will just get you inside. Hey, you're back. How are you? You enter. You understand? And this is one of the places where we expect a maximum security, as much as people must access, but then we expect security there. This is what actually gives a whole picture of how security, the seriousness of the security in a state. When you enter into a security detailed place, and you just have easy access inside there, then that tells how the president talked about the 12 security guidelines that would be taken. That was something like, is it 5 years ago? And up to today, they have not been implemented. You understand? You go to purchase the cameras. My question is, why don't you look for the best? If you have chosen as a state, why don't you look for the best? Why do you have now to first secure cameras, then now they are meaningless because you want to buy other cameras that will detect certain things? Why didn't you get the best in the first place?
Okay,
before you even come in, my brother Gad, I need to say this. That ADF is operating in Congo. In fact, by the way, ADF, I think, has declared its relationship with ICC. So we can say that now the most sophisticated terrorist element called ICC is now cohabiting with the ADF. If I can use the right word, it is now a guardian of ADF. So now nobody can denigrate the ability of ADF in wreaking havoc. But I must even say, without fear of contradiction, that ADF would, in terms of military technology, engendered on visiting crime in Uganda, be ahead of the state. Because the state, the structure, psychological structure every day, does not consider causing harm. It considers preventing harm. But it does that imaginary because they do not know what the other people hold in their stock in terms of the equipment. You get? So now the state coordinates its strategy of prevention on the basis of what they found out to be the form of weapon used. You get? So the state will always be responsive in its nature because they are replying to what the insurgents are doing. Now, since ADF is in Congo, it is in a foreign country, and we have the principle of sovereignty. So you need permission, in my sense of view, from the hosting country, which is now Congo, for you to pursue what they call hot passage in the national law against the ADF. But if the host country, which is now Congo, is not willing or does not offer that privilege, then you enter into Congo is another cause of concern.
Are you aware that our forces are there?
They are there, but they have not been there. They now would go there, but of course they must afford a bilateral concession in which Uganda has engaged the Congo in respect of this issue.
God, if you'll give me a second.
Okay,
A second. Yes, Owen, my brother, I'm not talking about Uganda, even if we had an army there or not. The fact that we already know that ADF is collaborating with the ISIS is enough for us to tighten our security. Okay? Because we now know we are dealing with a high-end terrorist group. Okay? And that is how we can be proactive.
And my disagreement with my brother.
God, you give me a second. Let me finish it. Because we are not seeing anything new being introduced, especially on our borders with Congo. We are seeing people keep coming in the way they want. And we already know that the ADF is now being funded. I don't know whether they are funded or what, but they are collaborating with a big terrorist group.
Gentlemen,
shouldn't we see security coming in to do something better?
The problem with my brother, I must say this, my brother. The problem is my brother here.
As we conclude,
yes, is to think that a country or a government or a state is an automated robot, which will, by the robot would not do it.
But it's run by humans.
In his sense of things, he thinks that the country can be a god of some sort, who will see what the terrorist is planning where. On the chase itself, that these terrorists, whether it is Joseph Kony or jihadists like ADF, have been sent away off the borders of Uganda. It is enough for Ugandan forces to retreat into a country and then enjoy some semblance of peace.
And settle now, and leave it at that?
Because they return on satisfaction that they have weakened.
But the group still exists. It's not
they reform.
I'm the host, so give me what I deserve. Moving forward, you've made your points on the security of this country, and people are watching. I'm so sure that even security members are also following us on Novatalk television. So moving forward, let's talk about the opening of schools. But before that, recently, you all know what transpired when the Minister of Education invited MPs to Kororo, and it became some sort of a saga in Parliament when MPs refused, citing rules of procedure. What do you make of the ministers' behavior and the MPs in that regard?
Yes, it's very important, but let me just throw just a second into the previous issue topic. I must say that Uganda has had so many hostile concubines, ADF, Lakwena, and so many things. So now, as we stand, we must commend this country, especially President Museveni and his government, for what they have done, been able to, in terms of defusing those people. So the peace we have is actually a huge cost, because there were so many military challenges that were facing the country, but the country has been able to dispel them. Now, what happened between Her Excellency, the First Lady Janet Museveni, is can only be a surprise for people who believe in form rather than substance. Because to me, what was to be addressed is of importance. You see, rules, laws exist, but you see, laws must be flexible to the individual circumstances of those that prescribe them. Okay. So now, is it a constitutional coup that would warrant that cacophony, that you have to have a hostile excitement in Parliament discussing the request by Her Excellency rather than what she was going to address? We may understand the rules and the requirements of rules, but now, do rules become that prescriptive to the extent of preventing us from addressing national issues and then adhering to them? You get? Because there must be an understanding why Her First Lady was inviting people in the way she did. Because I understand there were other exterior stakeholders who have not been part of the normal processes of Parliament, who needed to invest to have their input in the matter. You get it, eh? But now Ugandans, it's funny that we don't get concerned with the real issues. We focus on form rather than substance. Because she, as a minister, and in fact, a senior person like she is, she understood why she has done that. She also knows the existence of such procedures that demand her to address such issues from Parliament. But she could not do it because she needed a national discussion involving people who actually are doing a practical job in terms of education in Uganda. You get? So for those who don't understand, the essence now have concentrated on the forms of procedural rules. You get? These rules are just in books, but you have issues which are in the minds and in lives of people. You get? And these are issues that actually necessitated the presence of the stakeholders who could not have had the chance to contribute their opinions to the matter at the floor Parliament. Because the rules themselves would prevent such people from discussing or have an input in such matters at the floor Parliament.
Thank you, Owen. Over to you, Gideon.
I think on that same issue, the main issue was communication. The problem was with communication, because the speaker addressed it as a semi-parliament or sitting. But later, I watched the government chief whip on a certain TV station saying that it was a formal meeting for the Ministry of Education, but informal for the Parliament. And I don't see any problem inviting members of Parliament if it's not going to be a parliamentary sitting for any, even if it was an event. It's just that the speaker put his rule that's actually in law And they say that whoever wants to invite members of parliament for anything, they should go through him. So I don't see a lot any big issue in that. If it was formal for the Ministry of Education and informal, because even when you look at the time, yes, that same day the meeting had been fixed, had a parliamentary sitting, but the time of the meeting was before the sitting. So if it had been planned for it to be a parliamentary sitting, then they wouldn't rush to have it in very early in the morning, and then leave time for the parliamentary meeting. So I don't see a very big issue. I think that some members, especially politicians, against the person of the First Lady and the Minister of Education, but not. We are opening schools soon, surely. We want all our children to go back to school. Should where we sit or who calls who be an issue? No, that shouldn't be an issue. But again, if at all, if I could be mistaken, and it was meant to be a formal parliamentary sitting, then we cannot destroy a whole parliament for a meeting's sake. Because which precedent are we setting? You understand? Because I don't see under the law where a minister is given power to summon, because that is summoning now. If it is a formal parliamentary sitting, that is summoning now. You're summoning members of parliament to come. Yes, and then you're summoning them and giving them conditions. All of you must test for COVID-19.
I think that's where the problem was.
Yes, because these people first of all are vaccinated. You understand? Secondly, they have been inviting you as a minister to the committees. You have been sending a certain minister, your junior. Did he test first? Was the committee tested? So are you taking your life? Are you assuming that your life is more important than the others? Because now that is where the contradiction comes in. But if it was an informal meeting, why should you have us test as a must? I think we should present our COVID-19 vaccine cards.
You want to infect our president?
No.
That's when we are talking
No.
about.
If you have seen these events, there is little or no contact at all. The president is far away, and the First Lady as well.
Well,
and you see, before even you come in, my brother, this is the triviality that is actually subsuming the entire nation in disregard of the necessary context. Now, this so-called precedent is an argument, actually, a quotidian argument, ubiquitous among the whole polloi. And it loses meaning that we concentrate on. Well, first of all, precedent is set by what? And what does the precedent do? You know, what do precedents do? A precedent will bind you if it is documented to the extent that now it becomes law.
Yeah.
The invitation by the First Lady made to the Parliament to sit elsewhere would not set a precedent because it did not repeal any rules of the procedure of Parliament. And you could not have a president by infection because in the ordinary sense of things, the Parliament would come down to guard its own independence. In my view, it is an argument adopted by fellows to now gag the essence of the meeting itself. And we lose the point. Because imagine the time we should have spent on discussing issues of national importance in terms of education system in this country.
Who is calling
who where? You get, and that is the dilemma this country has. And the problem is one. the quality of people who vote into parliament.
Mm.
In fact, those who are even urging in favor of procedures against the meeting have never even read those procedures. They cannot even quote that procedure rule in detail. You get? So that's the problem that we have. So the argument of president, in my view, is irrelevant if we are bound to open schools for our children to continue with education.
Owen, moving forward, in that same context, do you think our schools are ready to open? And how is the government preparing them to open, first of all?
We badly want to open. We badly want to see our schools open. But I don't know. I think we are not ready. We are not prepared enough.
You badly want to open, but you think you're not ready. What does that mean?
Yes, I mean, the citizens want to see their kids go back to school. Even the government itself wants to open, because the economy is being affected every now and then. And it's not just getting affected today, because when these young people, you saw how many were reported young girls to have been pregnant. There are so many, even the boys that will drop out of school and will never go back, and that affects the nation in the long run. So we want the schools to open. Everyone wants, but the preparedness is another issue. I saw the Ministry of Education asking the private schools to re-register.
Yeah, for licenses.
And it's very funny. Which registration are you talking about? You mean these people have been working illegally? Is that what you're suggesting?
Maybe they want to know how many they are, so that they can how they can.
No, but you should have that. Why are you looking for it now? These guys have a UNEB center numbers. They are registered. I don't think there is a school that has been operating. If it has been, then they should be arrested instead, because that's illegal. So are you saying you lost the documents, you lost their registration forms or whatever, their certificates? What is it that necessitates you to have the schools re-register? Because these are things that are going to lengthen the process
and
of
they
reopening.
want them registered within 2 months. 2 months, yeah, November. Then
You want them registered
so,
within 2 months. We are talking of private schools whose these guys acquired loans. You remember there's a time after the first lockdown, the schools were open. Now, schools were closed while we were beginning the term, in the first place, the 2020. And we all understand what private schools go through. They get loans. Now, they closed. After that, we get another opening. These guys go back to the banks and get other loans, thinking they would work and pay the loans. They were closed again. These are the people we are talking about. They do not even know how they are going to start. They don't know. And you are telling them now to go back for registration. It is very funny. What registration are you talking about? What is it that you are looking for in that registration? 2, if there was any kind of help, any kind of relief to these schools or to the parents themselves that want to get back, because these parents have not been working. They have been home. They have lost businesses. We should be seeing it now. We should be seeing the government prepare. We don't want to see what happened. You see, we don't learn from our past experiences. You saw what happened when the Prime Minister was trying to give the 100,000 relief. They didn't have data. They didn't know who to send. The Nabanja money. And if the person they sent the money to first they was later arrested because he was not the right guy.
Yeah.
Now we are talking of reopening schools. You're showing us that you want the schools to reopen. You get? So we are opening in January. There's no clear picture of how we are going to open, who needs relief, how are you going to distribute that relief, how are you going to help the parents, is there help or is it not there? So we are waiting until the schools are open, then we shall start now addressing issues.
Gideon, you've made your point. Owen.
Yes, and before I give you a chance to change the question.
Not changing the
because
question.
now
Tackle that same question.
Your question is concerned with preparatory measures the state has put in place for reopening of the school. One, as a human, especially the consumer of knowledge, I just find education to be part of those basic human rights, or basic needs per se. Because after food, what a man needs is education. Because you have to feed the stomach for you to be able to...
Not clothing and shelter?
No. I'm saying among the basic needs of human beings, education is fundamental. You get? So I shudder. In fact, I detest an argument that is looking at education in a business sense. We must look at education as food, so much so that what it is, or what the needs are, is convertible to the available food. You get? That a hungry person will not be inclined towards the quality of food, because all you have to do is to save life. You get? So, preparation, for the adherents of preparation, they seem to say that there must be some class of preparation in terms of quality to accommodate the opening of schools for our children to study very well. Most of us actually, including the president, studied under teachers. You get? So the preparation is at the level of teachers who didn't exist, now exist. Okay, we had existent institutions, schools. You get? All of those directors of schools, the owners of schools, have been open because they run a business. In my view, the intervention of the state to reorganize such schools for preparation in view of opening the schools is in itself is an interference with the internal organization of such institutions. To me, preparation is not a necessity. What is a necessity is the opening of schools, the way they are. Whether people are going to go under tree shades, or they're going to change schools or other schools. Because now, there could have been schools liquidated by virtue of indebtedness to the bank accruing from the loan they had obtained to sustain their schools. Now we cannot go back to go into the contractual challenges of individuals for us to wait and open schools. We must then open society. Whoever was studying elsewhere and the school closed will now go for a school that is available. And parents and teachers are prepared. It will be an inconvenience by the state to think that they can make a general preparation for entire school system to open at once. This is a private...
So, Owen, you suggest that those who study...
Open the market, education market. I'm telling you, a student and a parent and teachers will situate themselves as far as the availability...
So, Owen suggests that those who are in Western region should study from Western region.
No, my view is that this is a world, a cosmopolitan Uganda. Everybody, assuming that they have closed the schools in Western Uganda, can my parent afford to take me to Gulu? Yes. Because now I don't need to be halted by the problems of education in my own region because I can't afford to go to another place. And so this is the danger the government is now getting into, that you think you can have that, achieve that general preparation. It cannot be. Open the market. You get? Children and their parents are going to find schools that exist and are functional, and I'm telling you, education is going to resume.
So you do not mind about private schools that are still struggling to to start.
No, you see, a private school,
Mm.
largely, most of them are private companies limited by shares.
Mm.
They are now inclined towards dividends, which are in profit form.
Mm.
But now we are looking at education as a service, a social service.
Mm.
It does not matter that somebody has earned out of it. It matters that somebody has benefited out of it, and that is a child of the country.
Mm.
You get so for us now to donate sympathy to such schools which are crumbling by virtue of their financial challenges, we are sacrificing our children at the altar of profit interests. You get? So our concern should be the continuity of education for our own children, not the existence of schools in view of business.
So you think you want to...
Owen is, I don't know which country he lives in. I don't know if it is Uganda.
The
And-
skin is Ugandan, look.
Because I don't know, how many government schools do we have that can sponsor all the children that we have in Uganda, as he suggests?
Mm.
Because you cannot do without private schools.
I think
And like he said, education is a basic need. I agree on that. Then he's throwing it at parents and leaving out the government. Yet the government is mandated to protect, to plan for its citizens.
God, I think it is not an act of indiscipline for me to correct my brother
Okay,
on
no,
my own
No,
statement.
but you're not giving me
I
chance to
never
submit.
said I
Let's
never
listen.
said anywhere that we must sacrifice private schools. I am saying that not all private schools are crumbling. You get?
But those who are not crumbling are very
Yes.
expensive.
First of all, what is your statistical evidence in view of those that are falling down and those that are still standing? Because now we cannot wait for the business problems of investors in schools for us to educate our own children.
No,
In fact, even in
Owen,
the
I'm not suggesting that
in the
we
former
wait.
Uganda,
Let's
in the former Uganda, schools were few. I am telling you.
But the population was
I am
small
telling
as
you,
well.
the demand for schools will determine the supply. In other words, there's going to be a response from investors into education.
Let's listen
Wait.
to Gideon's
No,
view, Owen.
Owen, the issue is that whether you take it or not, I might not have the statistics, and that is not my responsibility, by the way. The government should. The Ministry of Education should have the statistics by now. We are opening next year in January. We should see the Ministry of Education. It has a budget, for God's sake, and that is why they are given that money. And it is our money, it is your money, Owen.
The budget to do what, Gideon?
The budget to plan
For
how these schools are going to open.
private government.
Both, because they are all under Ministry of Education, even the private schools. Because I'm not suggesting that the government just gives money to private institutions. But can the government, since it has an upper hand, can it negotiate with the banks? Because they have the power to negotiate with the banks. You understand? Two, we are looking at these people who have not been working. Owen seems to be blind of the fact that the biggest percentage of Ugandans are poor. Actually, the rich are not more than 5% in Uganda here. So we are looking at these poor Ugandans. Do
poor Ugandans attend to private schools or to government
Yes,
schools?
they are.
So which schools in this regard have problems?
No,
as far
but you
as-
see, God, we all know. Let's admit, we should admit that there is quality in private schools better than the government schools. I think we should agree on that. Two, we need to agree that even if all government schools, even if we all chose to take our children to government school, they are not enough compared to how many children are going to school. Okay? So you cannot put out private schools. Well, they are cheap private schools. And actually the cheap ones, they I don't want to say cheap, but those that have minimal fees are the ones that have been hit hard You understand? So we need, as a government, Ministry of Education, you need to look at how to now to re-energize them, to empower them to come back again to business, such that they can accommodate the children of the poor Ugandans. Otherwise, if the schools, those schools keep closed, we are going to see.
I think
You see,
Owen,
the-
I
you-
think
you
Owen
saw-
has
the problem is
something
that
to add on.
when these guys want to obscure
2 minutes.
when these guys want to obscure an important argument, they tend to use the word poor, because now poor.
Are you suggesting that we don't have
Let's-
poor
because-
people in
because-
Uganda?
Because the word poor now,
Let's listen.
now the word poor makes the asserter a hero on behalf of the poor themselves. But that is always hypocrisy.
We are
Because that is
concluding
always,
this matter,
but that
so-
is always hypocrisy. The issue is that this is a market-led economy. Upon subjecting it to the policy of privatization. I am telling you, demand for schools will create schools, regardless of where and how and what. The quality, the place. You get? People are going to put up even tents, but they're going to start teaching. Because the most important incentive for education is a teacher, especially for primary and secondary education. It is for a teacher, a student, and then books. You get the point? So now, it is hard for you to come into interpretation of private contracts undertaken by schools and their bankers for you to settle that indebtedness. No, you are going to hinder the progress of these kids. Let's open schools. I'm telling you, even if it was one school, it's going to open branches. You get? Even if it was one school like this, existing in this country, it's going to open branches in response to the demands in different regions. And the education will continue.
Okay, let's run. We are concluding. We are out of time. We shall talk about this matter. I don't want us to use a lot of time. The Segirinya Sewanya na do arrest and how they have been denied bail. Gideon, in 2 minutes, what do you make of that?
Well, I want to believe that not until Honorable Segirinya and Honorable Sewanyana are proven guilty or innocent, I can now tell. I have seen so many people on social media saying, we know Segirinya, he's innocent. How do you know him? You know, it's very funny how you see people defend, because God, we are here on this show, but you don't know what I will do after here. You don't know where I'm heading. So it would be very hypocritical for you to stand and defend me, say Gideon cannot do this. But I want to talk about the incident on which they were rearrested. I think the security was unprofessional, and they did some. I actually want to give them my personal advice. You see, me and you know that a certain intelligence organ called the CMI did the rearrest. And they seem to be, I don't know, I would say above the law, the way the manner in which they do things. Because these guys are in prison, okay? You have the right to call the prison authorities.
And in this case, they are MPs.
Yes, they are members of parliament. But that's not the issue, even if they were ordinary citizens, even if it was Gideon or this peasant from Kashonji. We all fall under the same law. The MPs are not immune to the law. So, what I think they would have done in that sense.
As you conclude.
Yes. Well, the day they learned that Segirinya and Sewanyana were given bail, and they had pending information or new information that had come in, pinning them to the same case. What I would do if I was the director of CMI or maybe the investigating officer on that, I would call the prisons, okay, and liaise with them, tell them, you know what, we have new information that actually links those people again to some other cases. So what we are requesting is, please keep those people there. Do not release them as much as court has. So I will again talk to the a moment, guard. I will again talk to the to the judicial, the judiciary. Say, you people released these people on bail, but they have pending. We have gotten new information, and it is normal. Rearrests are normal, even when they have given you bail. Even if they actually, even if they were found innocent, and there is new information, they can be rearrested. That is normal. But the manner you talk to them, then you talk to police, okay? You realize
so you're
that
suggesting they did not follow any of those procedures?
they didn't. They just came and it
Let's,
was more of a kidnap.
let's
A moment,
listen,
guard. Just that's a second. Just a second. I want to give my advice to security. What I think is the right way to do things. So you talk to the UPDF spokesperson, inform them of what you're going to do, okay? Inform the police spokesperson of what you're going to do, okay?
You actually inform the institution.
The institution,
gets,
yes. Now inform the lawyers of the suspects, okay? Now after that, you can just go and pick the suspects from the prisons. Even if there is media, but there is a clear, because these security agencies, as much as they are security, they are answerable to the public, to the citizens of Uganda.
Maybe say they must work within the law. Let's get to Owen. Owen, what do you make of that
For
whole saga?
clarity's sake, my brother is conspicuously misled on the general view of what he's talking about.
Increase on your volume.
On the general view of what he's talking about. Now, first of all, a prisoner is in prison by virtue of the decision made by court. So, a prisoner is in the custody of prison authority because court has sent him there. The prison authorities are accountable to court, not any one person. When there is a release of anybody, that release is served in prison by court to release that person. In fact, the prison authorities are not accountable to anybody because they are not agents of police. For nobody can be arrested from prison. No, you can't be arrested from prison. You must be out at large, and then on new charge of investigations, then you are summoned by police or arrested by police and taken back to court for judging. And that's why these security guys do not arrest such people usually from the precincts of court. They wait for them outside court. Because it would be a great transgression in terms of criminal procedure breach for one to come now, invade the temple of justice to execute a rearrest based on a different transaction or investigation. But let me say this, that the following, there's something called natural law, which actually was God ordained, that at the creation of man, God put laws which governed the transaction of men, and those laws were common sense based. You get, because the enforcement was hard. They were only it behooved you to respond to the necessity of morality. That was the law, morality. But now, because a man became brutish, as Jean-Jacques also said, or Immanuel Kant, then there came what they call positive law. And positive law is a code under which this so-called bail falls. You get, so therefore, like in the Ugandan context, bail is a creature of the Constitution. But what does it say? It says that you have a right to apply for bail, and then court has the discretion to grant for bail. When there is a case, when somebody is suspected, arrested, and arraigned in court, so what happens is that you are charged according to the law, and so bail is granted according to law. And the law says that the court shall reserve a right to give you bail. So bail is not mandatory, you get, as people want to construe it. And so, courts in exercise of that discretion refuse to grant or sometimes grant. And when the grant is made or not made, it is not within your right to disparage court, you get, or to urge religiously against court, because now court is subject to different codes of law, which is positive law. You get the point?
Yeah.
Now, so, if Sekirinya and Sewanya are still in prison, they are still even preserved under the law, because bail is a pre-trial remedy. It is not a conclusive remedy. So nobody should mistake it to be that a release on bail is in itself an end of the case.
As you conclude.
As I conclude, let's not criticize court or even look at court as if they're in connivance with government, because government is a party to the case. In fact, in the sense of judgment of government, these people are culpable, are guilty. But the law which now courts uphold is to the extent and into the mind of court that these people are proven innocent till then. You get? But then it is not the duty of court to release people on bail. It is that duty falls squarely within the requirements of the law. That somebody must satisfy certain requirements for it to be granted bail. You understand?
We are in other people's time.
Therefore, I must say conclusively that you must accord court that ample independence to exercise its duties under the law. Court is law, and so what it does must be law. So we should not impute bad faith on courts because somebody or someone has not been granted bail. So many people who are not politicians have not been granted bail.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much, the directors behind the camera and staff. Thank you, Novatalk Television. Thank you, Tesoro Classic at Nakasero Universal House, in front of Nakasero Market for the brand design. Until next time, Novatalk Television.